Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Proudly PR episodes. Now, predicting the outcome of PR work is the central source of stress for 61% of respondents in the Proudly PR industry survey. So, today we're going to talk about how public relations professionals, both inside the agency and in house, can reduce this stress to zero. At least that's the hope. Specifically, we're going to talk about some metrics. To answer this question on the PR episode, I'm joined by two experts. We have the founder and CEO of Simply Multimedia, based out of Austin, Texas, Milou Peters, and the head of US PR at Journey Further, Domenica Dottavio, who's joining us from New York. Hello, ladies.
Hey, Jim. It's nice to be here.
I hope I've got your names pronounced correctly there today.
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Jim James. I'm your host, and I'm here just to remind you, first of all, that this webinar will run for about 20 to 25 minutes with the panelists, and then we're going to open up the virtual floor to questions. So feel free to post into the chat for us any questions that you have. The team from Proudly, Michaela and Victoria, are monitoring that chat like hawks, and we will have 10 to 15 minutes to answer your questions at the end. The plan is to wrap up at around 1:40 to 1:45 so that you can have a break before your top of the hour calls. Let's go first to the west side of our team. Milou, you're an agency owner. What do you see as the main source of this stress that comes from predicting results for clients?
Yeah, what we see within the agency with our clients, the biggest stressor always comes down to not being able to guarantee results, right? So we're a PR and social media agency, and we see this on the social media side as well, right? We cannot guarantee results. We can give benchmarks, case studies, but it's one of those things where it depends, right? It depends on the client's goals. What are we going after? And yeah, it adds a little bit of stress, right? When you cannot guarantee that result.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's always that tension, isn't there, where the client wants a guaranteed result and the agency knows they can't give it, especially if you're operating with integrity and really earning that media coverage. Domenica, you are based in New York and you are running the US PR for Journey Further. I've said it the wrong way. Journey Further, that's right, which have offices in the UK here too. So what do you think the main sources of stress are, and are they different for companies working across multiple offices?
I think they are. We have offices in London, Manchester, Leeds in the UK, and in New York. And then in the US, we're also dispersed. So we're working across like 5 different time zones. So I think that the stressors for the PR pros over in the UK are a little different. Clients are different, culture is different. Just like, not to generalize too much, but we do find our clients in the US tend to want us to get to the point, be very brief, be very clear. Like, clarity is key, and just get on with showing performance. We find that the clients in the UK are a little more relaxed, like love to chat, that kind of thing. So different cultures totally, but definitely different stressors in terms of where you live as well. Like New York and London, naturally hustle and bustle, whereas some of the other offices, maybe it's a little bit more relaxed in the people you work with. But I think that the number one stressor that we have working with a dispersed team all over the UK and America is that the time zones. We work across 5 different time zones. So we have people on the West Coast, in Texas, in Florida, in New York, in the offices in Leeds. And sometimes there's only like 2 or 3 hours for that collaboration. You have to figure out when they're going to be online. And that means that at least for my team, we have to be thinking like 2 or 3 steps ahead, like 2 or 3 days in advance, often, to book time in with the pros over there, or also to schedule messages. Like, if we're working with the UK team on something for a global account and the client sends a message and needs something, that day, we got to make sure that we're on the ball and we have really clear communication in order to deliver that.
Really, really interesting point. So you've got some cultural differences and then some practical time zone differences, both throwing some curveballs in there. Milou, let's just come back to you in Austin, Texas. It seems to me, having run my own agency for 25 years, that a lot of stress originates at the point of the pitch. Clients do want everything for nothing, and agencies want to deliver the best value. But with earned media, it's not possible to give guarantees. So what criteria do you use to determine if a key performance indicator that may be demanded by the client is realistic and is achievable for a PR campaign?
Yeah, so we're very clear with the client on setting expectations, right? And being transparent with them. So first and foremost, wanting to know their goals, right? If their goals are very unrealistic, then maybe it's not something we can take on, and we have to educate the client on what would be a realistic expectation and KPI. But how we kind of turn that around when we cannot guarantee the end result, what we can guarantee is, for example, the number of pitches that we put out on behalf of a client, so that they do know like the work is being put in, right? Again, we see similar patterns on social media. You cannot guarantee that the money comes in right away, especially, again, we're talking organic and earned media. But what we can guarantee is the content that goes out, the pitches that we do, how often we do it, right? And so being very transparent and setting that expectation up front so that there's no miscommunication down the line where you're 6 months in or however long and the client is like, where is my result? Where is the ROI?
So the transparency there, really, really key, and managing expectations there as well. Domenica,
Yeah.
what about for you? What do you do to determine with your clients if a KPI is realistic or not, especially in light of maybe the cultural differences in people's expectations?
Well, I think clearly it starts with transparency and clear communication and complete honesty. I mean, would you rather win a piece of business based on absolutely nothing, based on lies, or would you rather win a piece of business based on trust and collaboration? So setting KPIs is not something that we do or they do. It's something that we do together and we talk through it, but it's mostly based off of historical performance. It's based off historical performance. What kind of company are they? Are they B2B? Are they B2C? Are they a startup? Are they a legacy brand that everybody knows about already? Those things really impact how a client will perform with PR. And if they've never done PR before ever, and they're just trying to get their name out, there's a slow time to launch, especially too. So it's not just KPI, but it's also the cadence of how you're going to be able to hit that KPI. But it's just, you can't come up with something out of thin air. You got to work with your new business team and your growth team and make sure that those conversations are happening right from the beginning.
And Domenica, I'm going to stay with you because you've mentioned, New York and the hustle and bustle there, particularly. In what ways can unrealistic metrics and targets lead to burnout in teams, do you see?
I think that if we're talking about burnout in PR teams, I think that it's probably the number one source of burnout is when your team is working like tirelessly towards a KPI that's not based in reality whatsoever. So what happens is, especially on the delivery teams, they're not maybe clear that this is an unrealistic KPI. So they go for it and their self-worth is tied to whether they're successful or not. And they start to think, maybe I'm not good at this, or maybe my peers are able to get this for their clients, but I'm not able to get it. And it's totally detrimental to the team. And what my goal is as a head of PR is to grow the business, but it's also to retain my talent and to make sure that everyone on the team has great work-life balance and satisfaction. So it's really a tricky game to balance those things, but you just got to be clear with the client up front. And I think it prevents most of the issues.
Milou, you're an agency owner. So tell us, what metrics do you set for your team members, trying to always balance the need for pleasing clients and yourself, having profitability to maintain the business and staff welfare? Because actually it's a careful formula, isn't it? And a careful balance that you have to tread.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier as well, what we're very transparent in, let's say, the number of pitches, that, there is a cap, obviously, for my team as well, to protect them. So of course, usually, the more we pitch, there's a greater chance of landing certain features or collaborations and things like that. But there needs to be a cap, like what Domenica said earlier as well. Otherwise, the pressure just starts to rise, and it can just lead to burnout, to where someone, whether it's in-house with us in an agency or, bigger brands, it's like, where does it stop? Do we just continue in order to hit a KPI that we're not able to hit right now? So that is one thing. And then another thing is, once we actually land PR and, let's say, features and things like that, it doesn't stop there for us, especially being a social media and PR agency. We then take it to the client social media, where we can track so much more, right? Sometimes it can be very hard with online features and things to have all the data, especially when it's hosted not on your own domains. And so we take it to social media and start tracking all the analytics there. How many people are reading, the Now Social Proof that you landed? How many people are clicking? We use tools like ManyChat to automate and automatically send the link of the article that goes out to followers and things like that, to maximize on the actual PR that we landed them. And it creates a bunch of content as well, right? Being able to land different collaborations and features.
Okay, so you're using the technology to demonstrate to the clients, and I think it's called ManyChat, wasn't it? For anyone that's interested, ManyChat.com. Domenica, tell us a little bit about the tech stack that you use as well to manage metrics, because, in my day, we used to have a spreadsheet. I'm dating myself a little bit here, but we used to type in each week a WIP and send it to the client. Eventually, we got to shared worksheets, but things have definitely moved on. And I'm sure in New York, in the Big Apple, it's much more whizzy than the way we used to work. So how do you ensure that clients don't just stress out because they feel out of control of the process?
I definitely need at this point, in case anyone on my team is watching, to shout out the Leeds team for developing this technology, not the New York team. So we have these 24/7 dashboards. They're bespoke to each client. Depends if the client is fully integrated and engages with us for like paid media, influencer, PR, organic SEO, like those dashboards look a lot different than if they're just engaging with us for PR. But what they are really essentially is like a 24/7 look. And obviously, in the beginning of engagement, we ask, when do you report to your internal stakeholders? What metrics do you care about? And we definitely do our best to adhere to that. But the best thing about a 24/7 dashboard is when a client gets used to using it, they love it, because at any given moment, they have the information that they need. And for those clients that are really integrated with us, we're reporting for them too. They're using it well beyond what we're doing for them as well. Like, they can use it to see how the business in general is performing, depending on what inputs. And they're hooked into all different kinds of tools. And I don't want to get into every single one that's hooked into, but it's one of my favorite things. One of the things I will say that we also use, because we're talking about mental health, we're talking about stress. So one of the tools that we use for our team is a tool called Office Vibe. And there's all kinds of tools that are similar to that. But I love Office Vibe because it allows for a continuous, and if the person wants to be, anonymous feedback loop. We're able to monitor engagement on the team, happiness on the team, measure things like satisfaction at work. Do you feel autonomous in your work? Would you recommend working to your peers? Those kinds of, we can get that information every week over week and see how we're performing against last week on the team. So that really helps keep a pulse too. We're not just reporting for clients, we're also reporting to make sure that we're retaining our top talent, basically.
That's really good, Domenica. And you mentioned this tool. Sorry, just repeat the name of that platform you're using.
It's called Office Vibe.
Office Vibe. And there's another one called Mode.work, actually also out of the UK, for example, where people can sort of chat about how they're doing inside the company in a private way. But that way the team can start to take a temperature check as well and support one another with sort of virtual high fives. Milou, same kind of question for you, really. How are you helping your consultants, sort of maintain the independence of their work and be transparent about some of the stress that they're feeling, and yet not be displaying everything for the clients? Because there's now this delicate balance, isn't there, with kind of almost everything's on show, but people need the freedom and the privacy to get on with their work. How are you balancing that?
Yeah, it's a great question for us. Again, like the transparency, we, for example, include Friday snapshots with a client. Every Friday, they get an insight of what we've been working on that week, what's in progress, what has been landed, and so they're always in the loop. Well, we don't have a 24-hour dashboard necessarily with them. But I also believe in, sharing with the client what's actually necessary for them to actually see, right? Because what happens if you overshare with a client and they might get too involved, right? And say, oh no, they want to take some charge, right? And have some decision making there. So yeah, you want to be transparent, but keep it in a way where is this actually beneficial for a client to know and see, I think is very important so that we don't have all the cooks in the kitchen, including the client, right?
Well, that's right. Sometimes the client can end up sort of also trying to manage the consultant
Yeah.
directly, can't they, without the involvement of the team. And that can, especially for junior members of staff, create a lot of stress because they feel loyal to the client and loyal to the company at the same time. Domenica, let's just talk about clients for a moment. And some people watching this will be on the client side. What's your approach to briefing the clients? Because as we know, especially in larger companies, the internal PR manager or marketing manager, they have clients themselves, right? They have to report to maybe a CMO or a marketing director. So they also have stress. How do you help the client side kind of manage the stress of the PR activities that you're doing for them?
Yeah, so I actually just had a conversation with a client about this yesterday. He's putting a case together to expand some services, and he asked if we could help, and I said absolutely. We can, prepare anything that you need in order to sell this to your internal stakeholders. But in terms of when we're talking about like managing expectations or like really, I think Milou has said it several times, but it's absolute key, and it's like. I think it's underrated. Clear transparency and communication with the client goes so far in establishing that right from the very beginning. We love to meet, and this is very different, I think, than some other agencies, with internal PR teams and even other PR agencies that a client might be engaged with, because we love to see where they're focusing on, what are their goals, how can we help, how can we exchange information. And also there is some especially in PR, just getting in the nitty gritty, there's some particular possessiveness over media contacts, right? So we have to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes, and that our strategies are working together and not against each other. And I think that's really, we've heard from clients how refreshing it is, because of working with other agencies that flat out refuse to talk to PR folks internally, because they're very protective of the work, and of the brand image. So definitely just getting on calls and meeting everybody if you can.
Milou, come to you. You sort of said yes there in the background. I'd love to have the full force of your views there on that in terms of engaging with the other side of the equation, which is, of course, the in-house PR manager, PR counsel. How are you helping them?
I always think it's so intriguing, and I was about to say how refreshing that is, Domenica, that you are collaborating. I always believe in collaboration, because at the end of the day, you both want what's best for the client, right? And we've seen similar things on the social media side when we work with a large company or corporation, that usually we are hired as an extent of the in-house team, and that can often feel like a threat, right? And so we're all about collaboration, and you both at the end of the day want to have the client's best interest in mind. So yeah, I'm all for collaborating and meeting other people to make the end result work at the end of the day. I think you're stronger together that way.
Okay, that's wonderful. We did start this conversation about metrics and how this is the number one source of stress for people in the PR industry. Domenica, coming across to you back in New York, when it comes to using metrics to predict outcomes and to reduce stress, what would you say is your number one piece of advice that you give? Because you've got young people coming through the ranks as well as an established team.
Yeah. So one piece of advice, I'll try to keep it succinct. So you have to do all that historical performance like you got to look at what you think your figure can be, whatever it is, whatever metrics you're using to track for the client. And then right at that stage, if you have an idea on who that delivery team is going to be, go ahead and ask them, hey, what would you say about this? Just make sure they're on board before you present it back to the client before the contracts are signed. So I say, hey, I did the math. Here's how I did the math. Do you agree with this? What do you think? Anything I missed? Any considerations I missed about this brand and what we think we can do for them? And usually, based on the figures, it's a yes. But definitely just get their buy-in, your team's buy-in as well. Help to prevent that burnout that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, and Dominika, thank you for that. I think it sounds like Dominika sounds as though really your team is very lucky to have you kind of standing guard for them as well. Milo, you have the burden as well of running an agency, not Dominika to undermine the role you've got, but I know if you're trying to balance profitability with billability and welfare, what would be your advice maybe to fellow agency owners that are on this call about how you do that? Because it's a slightly different position, is it, when you run the agency and you are trying to balance this equation?
Yeah, so what I always recommend, and again, we do this for all areas of marketing, but PR too, is write case studies. So again, we can't guarantee results, but if we look back at, we can show other clients what we have done there, what the results look like. So writing case studies on different campaigns, what the quote unquote ROI looked like, how it impacted them and their brands, that can really, get you ahead for the next client when they wonder, okay, what can we expect, right? Because again, I can't give you a guarantee. I'm not making promises, but what I can do is share, it's pretty much historical data, like Dominika said, share case studies we've written for other campaigns and other clients that are somewhat similar to them, right? You don't want to take someone that's completely different from them. But yeah, so we write a lot of case studies all the time to make sure that we can show them what to expect.
That's really interesting. So there's a big part of education in this as well. Let's just look a little bit at the future if we can, because we've got a bit of time here. And I think the team at Prowly will hopefully let us know if there are any questions popping up in the group. Dominika, what do you see as being some of the trends going forward? What do you see clients starting to ask for that may have been different even a few years ago in PR?
One of the things we're working on a pitch right now, actually, for a client, and something in the brief that they said that I thought was interesting. We need a dashboard. They said we need a 24/7 bespoke dashboard, and I thought that was really interesting because a few years ago, that dashboard was definitely an add-on. It was like some really exciting thing. And now clients are coming to us like, no, we actually need we need this. So I'm seeing that for trends in terms of what clients are asking. But in the digital PR space, which is primarily where we work, which is all about using PR and combining PR and SEO, for basically performance organically. We're seeing a lot of clients come to us, just getting really into the niche, but really understanding that it's not the volume of links and coverage, it's the relevance of links and coverage, relevance to the brand, relevance to the readers, relevance to the publisher. So it's all about quality over quantity. And in the past, we've had to explain that to clients, but now clients are coming to us, they already know that. So I think it's moving in a great direction.
That's interesting. So clients are becoming more sophisticated, which has got to be good for the agency world. That the agency normally leads, doesn't it, in the kind of whole thought realm of how PR is going to work. Milo, what about you in terms of trends that you're seeing in sort of metrics and prediction and PR?
Yeah, so I think Dominika made some great points. There was a time where we actually didn't have a dashboard, and I went to our operations team like, hey, I know PR is not traditionally based on dashboards, but we need a dashboard to take off stress, for transparency, so that they can see how hard we're working behind the scenes, And so yeah, dashboard is a big thing, and like clients want that transparency versus just, you know, the work being put in behind the scenes and letting them know when something lands. What I think too, and what I thought was so great that Dominika mentioned, is the collaboration. I think we're starting to collaborate slowly more and more in the PR world, where we're not as gatekeeping within the industry itself. And then for us, like a huge thing is the combination of PR and social media, because they're both completely organic. And I think there's a big gap between the two. So we like to cover that gap to make sure they cover both areas and make the most out of the PR that they're investing in.
You've both mentioned dashboards, and it would be kind of remiss of me not to mention, maybe to ask you both maybe just a couple of key stats on those dashboards that you do include, because everyone is asking about metrics. So what would be just a few of those key numbers that you would have on those dashboards that clients are asking you for?
Sure. So I could go first. So we have, those micro metrics and we have macro metrics. So if we're able to hook up to plug in all of the things that we need to plug in, in a perfect world, we have access to all the information we need. We're able to report on target keyword rankings in terms of micro. We're able to report on link and coverage volume, what type of link, if it was linking coverage, domain rating. And then for macro, we're able to report on traffic, and even in some cases, sales. So
really,
yeah.
you haven't mentioned time, which is it, because it used to be in the old days, you'd have a time tracking software and you'd have to just bill every 15 minutes like a lawyer. So you're not tracking the number of hours spent, it sounds.
Not on our performance dashboards. No, it's strictly the numbers that matter to the client. We do have that information. Very rarely do we get asked for it though, but we track, of course.
That's interesting. That is a change in the way that it used to be. I think because PR has become so much more attribution led with digital tech, whereas in the old days you'd have a magazine or a media that would print maybe a month later, a month after you've done the work. So maybe now, because it's all real time and digital. Milou, what about you? If I can ask you, what would be some of the data points that your clients want to see on dashboards?
Yeah, so what we do is we will track, we have a PR bio on dashboard that automatically integrates into, what's happening and the progress, so that it can include how many pitches went out this week, how many follow-ups that we do, how many were landed. And then outside of that, of course, the traffic from the ones that did land, click-through rate, and then really on the social media side, or if we were able to include links into actual features, we can track that, right? The click-through rate. So that is typically the overviews that the client can see. Okay, this many pitches went out, this many were followed up with, that were maybe from a previous round, so that there is transparency in the progress.
Fantastic. And your clients actually able to comment and leave notes on those dashboards as well, in terms of this sort of collaboration, the spirit of collaboration?
So for us specifically, it's really an exported dashboard. So it's not interactive, but we communicate via Slack and tools like that, to where, yes, they can leave any insights, questions they have. If we followed up with X or brands or whatnot, we can clarify that with them. But that gives them, an automatic overview that doesn't cost us extra time to tell them what's actually happening or what we're doing.
Okay, so that's great. So really some key points coming out here. One is about transparency. One is about the need to sort of show the client a lot, but not necessarily everything, to keep them up to date, but not so that they are sent to manage your team for you at all. If there's sort of a one key takeaway, Dominika, that you'd like to give before we look to see if we've got any questions, what would it be?
For me, reduce burnout on your team by setting realistic expectations for the client, together with the client, not for the client. Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. And Milou, for you?
Yeah, continue to be transparent and upfront, like you mentioned, Jim, like integrity, right? Don't overpromise. Like if anything, underpromise, overdeliver. And write those case studies so you actually have data to back up that the team has been doing successful campaigns in the past, to pitch to new clients.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. And I think Michaela is going to let us know if we've got any questions. At the moment, I can't see any. So I think probably what we're going to do is that's our 30 minutes. And I know everybody has got to be busy. So I'm going to just thank my guests. I've got Milou Peters in Austin of Simply Multimedia. Thank you for joining me today, Milou.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that's wonderful. And we've got Domenica Dottavio from Journey Further PR based in New York. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been so fun.
It's been short and sweet. We've got a lot of amazing information stacked in here. So you can find this on the Prowly.com website. There is a link to PR episodes. And of course, if you've got any questions at all, the Prowly team will be more than happy to answer those. They do like to put this up on YouTube so that everybody can follow up. And this is part of the Prowly really move to support the industry, which I think we'll all be really grateful for. So Prowly is the all-in-one PR platform. I use it myself for media outreach as well. So it's fantastic. Thank you very much for joining this episode. My name is Jim James. And until we meet again, I just encourage you to be transparent with your clients. And please don't stress about the metrics. They're there to support you. And you will no doubt do a great job of providing amazing service to your clients. Thank you once again for joining this episode of the Prowly PR episodes.
Thanks, Jim.
That was fun.